I think every single dog should be muzzle trained for the reason of an emergency.
Welcome to the Woofi Show, the ultimate dog lover's digest. Meet your hosts, Brian and Magda, two dog lovers ready to help you be the best dog parent, unravel the mysteries of canine behavior, and keep you updated on the latest trends in the dog world. This podcast has something for everyone. Get ready for heartwarming stories, expert advice, and a lot of laughs.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about muzzles and specifically the advantages of it, the disadvantages, and maybe common misconceptions about them, and possibly some training tips of how to make your dog like them more. So joining me on today's show is Samantha, who is a muzzle advocate. So Sam, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what inspired you to become a muzzle advocate.
For sure. So I recently became a certified dog trainer through the Victoria Stillwell Dog Training Academy. And I have two dogs of my own. So my first dog, Harley, didn't show any like major behavioral concerns or anything like that. You know, they kind of joke and say like your first dog is like this angel dog and then you get your second dog.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think my dog is an angel, but like I'm a bit worried getting the second one.
It's so true. With Wesley, he's definitely a mama's boy. And when he turned about 2, a year and a half, 2, he started to show some signs of resource guarding towards other dogs.
So would you be able to explain what is a resource guarding for those who don't know?
Of course. So resource guarding is essentially a dog is protecting something that they deem as super high value. So this can change from dog to dog. So like some dogs will guard sticks, some dogs will guard people. With Wesley, one of his major things is food. So like high value bully sticks or anything like that, his food bowl. We started to see some signs of him trying to guard those things. And my other dog I love her to death, but she's a little pushy around food. So before we started to really train it, she would come into his space, he would react, they'd get into a fight. And of course, whenever dogs fight, you are worried about potential bites. Yeah. Which we never want. You never want to have that happen to your dog.
Yeah, of course, especially when the dogs live together, right? They have to get on because if they don't, that's an issue.
It's hard for sure. And it's a lot of management, a lot of training. But one of the tools that we use to help with this alongside of training is a safety tool, which is muzzles. So Wesley is my guy. He's absolutely adorable.
What breed is he?
So Wesley is a 2.5-year-old Bernedoodle.
Okay.
He is awesome. The reason I became a trainer, actually, because of all of this behavioral stuff that started happening with him. And yeah, I absolutely found a passion for muzzles when I first started training him because people don't quite understand what they're used for a lot of the time. Yeah. And like you mentioned before, there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding them.
Yeah. So would you be able to just quickly kind of explain what is a muzzle? Yeah. And what situations is it kind of used for?
For sure. So muzzles are essentially a safety tool. So I brought Wesley's here with me, which we'll get into a little bit more later about like what type of muzzle it is and everything like that. But essentially it is a safety tool. So one of my biggest things with training with clients or training with essentially anybody who I talk with, muzzles are one of my main go-tos if there are concerns of a potential bite. Another reason that people might use them is for prevention. So obviously preventing bites, preventing their dog from ingesting things off of the ground, pretty much anything that you can think of that, like there's the BSL, breed-specific legislation that have been implemented in the UK and everything like that, where the dogs do require the use of muzzles. There's no other reason other than their specific breed. So that's another reason why people essentially have been forced to use muzzles in that case.
So one of my questions as well is there like specific breeds or maybe temperaments that you would, tell people, oh, this breed or this kind of behavior should have the muzzle?
For sure. So for me personally, I don't think that there's a specific breed that requires muzzles. I think that muzzles can be used for each individual situation for dogs. So not necessarily saying like all Bernedoodles need muzzles, or all in the UK where they say like all extra large bully breeds need muzzles. For me personally, it's on a situational basis. Yeah. So if your dog, like I said, they are training or a safety tool to use in conjunction with training. Mm-hmm. So you're never going to put a muzzle on a dog and say, we'll just put them into a situation and see how it goes. Yeah. Like say your dog is showing signs of like not liking other dogs, being uncomfortable, potentially biting other people. You're not going to put one of these on and it's magically going to cure everything. Yeah,
it's all about the training, right?
Exactly.
And kind of conditioning your dog to be comfortable with this tool.
Yeah. So it is a safety tool to be used in conjunction with training of different behaviors, different cues, for different situations.
Because I feel like when you go to a pet store, for instance, you can't really find them. Yeah. I have never seen a muzzle just hanging there being like, oh, here's muzzle section. Let's try them out and things like that. So I was actually wondering, where can you get these things from? And how do you even find out about all these different types and what is the right type of a muzzle for your dog?
There are so many different... Obviously, there's a lot of different types of dog breeds, which means there's different face shapes, different sizes, size requirements. Obviously, I'm not going to go put this type of muzzle on a Yorkie. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be much bigger.
The Yorkie could probably fit into that.
Exactly. You could carry them around kind of like this in it, right? So so for me, there's multiple different types of muzzles that I suggest. So the ones in the pet store that you will find are something called the Baskerville muzzles. Now,
you can show to a camera what they look like.
So this is what you're going to find in most pet stores. And it's probably one of the only ones that are available in kind of your Pet Value, Petco, different things like that.
Why is that though?
So they are... because of the sizing that, like every dog is different with their sizing. Mm-hmm. You can't, like this one that I have for Wesley.
I'll pick you up. There you go.
This one that I have for Wesley is a custom muzzle.
Okay.
So I found an amazing company out of BC who does custom biothane muzzles. Mm-hmm. Absolutely love them. They're fantastic. But you can't, because he has very specific measurements in order to ensure that he has proper pant room so that he can't, dogs, the way that they regulate their body temperature is through panting. Yeah. Well, it's one of the ways that they do. So you want to ensure that the muzzle is big enough for
them to open their mouth.
To completely open their mouth. Some people will say like there's different types of muzzles for different situations. Mm-hmm. For me, I think it's super important to mark that your pet, regardless of the situation, should be able to drink water out of a muzzle, should be able to be in a full pant, and they should be able to eat out of it. Mm-hmm. So for Wesley, you can see he has a little hole here. Yeah. When we're doing training sessions, that's where he gets his treats. He can do his full lip licks and everything like that in his muzzle.
So going back to the muzzle that you were talking about, the one that we can find in a pet store, can you just quickly explain for those who are just listening, what do they look like? And kind of what are the main things about it that makes it special?
Of course. So for the Baskerville muzzles, they're kind of a harder plastic. They kind of will sit on front of the dog's face. Depending on the dog, it can be comfortable. Mm-hmm. Most dogs that I have used these muzzles on, especially with Wesley, they're not as comfortable as potentially a biothane.
Oh, like a custom made one, right?
Exactly, because it is like, you can like feel it if you want. It's very, very lightweight.
It is. It's very bendable and lightweight, and it feels like it can shape into the dog's face quite comfortably. And it's actually not very heavy either.
No, that's one of the biggest things that I liked about the biothane. But these ones are not bite-proof. Okay. So these ones are, they can be bite-resistant, but they are not bite-proof. So I'll share in a couple minutes about the ones that are more bite-proof. But going back to the Baskerville, those ones are also not bite proof.
Okay.
So the type of plastic that they are, they've been tested and stuff like that, where they aren't necessarily as bite proof as other brands that I'll mention coming up.
So what is the general purpose of that specific muzzle?
So for this one, again, prevention. I used the Baskerville muzzle when I was first starting to muzzle train Wesley because they are so readily available. They do come in, I believe it's size, somebody will probably correct me on this, but okay. I believe it's size 0 or even 00 to size 7. And those are generally readily available in stores.
Okay.
If you have a dog like Wesley, even like the larger size, it didn't quite fit, like, because he's a Bernedoodle, so he has the poodle nose. So he has quite a long snout. And it just didn't work for him. But when we were muzzle conditioning, which I'll talk about afterwards, it is the first muzzle that we did use because it is readily available.
So you'd say like it's a good kind of starting ground if you're trying to condition your dog to wear a muzzle
100%
to begin with, right? So what are the other types of muzzle
For
that
sure.
you can talk about to us?
The wire basket muzzle is bite proof. So there's a couple different companies that make them. I won't name them because there's so many. I can give a resource list
I feel like
afterwards.
these are the ones that people are most afraid of. They kind of like, oh my gosh, it looks like a crate that you put on your dog's face.
Exactly.
Right?
And there's so many misconceptions surrounding it, which is kind of why I like this one as well. Because, you know, it's more colorful. It's not as scary.
It looks more fun.
But these ones, the wire basket muzzles, they are bite proof.
Okay.
They are not scavenger proof though. Depending on kind of the size of the kind of bars that are there. They can be scavenger proof, but some of them are not. So like this one, I would consider scavenger proof because Wesley couldn't ingest anything through like a larger piece of something through there. His little treat hole. He's not going to get anything in there unless I'm like
actually physically
giving it to him. Whereas some of the larger like spaces in between, those ones can have a harder time for scavengers because they can ingest things. But they can't actually bite, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like if, for instance, your dog has that aggression towards other dogs, would you say you'd pick that one? Yes.
So while you're doing your training and working, I always suggest any type of aggression, working with a certified trainer, whichever route you decide to go. If you want to go force free, if you want to go balanced, that's totally up to the owner. But I would always suggest, something like this to be bite proof. You don't want to ever put your dog in a situation, even if they have a muzzle on, like I mentioned earlier. You're not just going to go put them face to face with a dog and be like, here you go, have fun. It's not going to end well.
And of course, dogs don't naturally like the muzzle. So it's something that you have to train them to like.
100%.
Just like anything.
Exactly. No different than a leash, no different than a harness.
Exactly.
You need to condition them to... You need to make a positive association with the muzzle. I take this out and Wesley's like, awesome, we're going on an adventure. It's like the best thing for him.
That's great.
Yeah.
So there is another muzzle that you showed me, which is kind of like a plastic thing. Like a plastic basket almost, right? That sits on a face. So would you be able to talk a little bit about that?
Of course.
What is the actual name for it?
So those ones are called a vinyl muzzle.
Okay.
So... essentially it kind of looks like a clear plastic that kind of goes around.
It looks like a clear bottle with holes in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Very similar. So it's completely breathable. Your dog is able to do a full pant. Again, with all of the muzzles that I'm showing, except for the last one, which we'll talk about afterwards. They all have the ability to have the full open pant room for the dog, which I love this one as well. The vinyl muzzle, it is bite proof. It's completely customizable for fit, so you can find a company that makes them and then find...
So they're not readily available?
No. So the only one that I find that is readily available is the Baskerville, which we talked about the first time. And then the last one, which I'll talk about, which I don't suggest owners get. Unfortunately, that one is one of the more cheaper ones, and it's more readily available. So owners who don't know any better will say, hey, I'm looking for a muzzle. Some stores will send them that way because they are less expensive.
Yeah, and they kind of don't know any better.
Exactly, which is why we're here.
Yeah, to educate and to tell people what is the best muzzle for you.
Exactly.
So yeah, awesome. So anything else you would like to add about that one specifically?
So that one is also scavenger proof because it does have the, like they have treat holes, kind of looks like Swiss cheese around it. They are super breathable, and so they can drink water, have treats and stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't, again, like if your dog is super high prey drive and you're working in training, something accidentally happens, they're not going to be able to go after that squirrel and ingest it.
Yeah.
Or they're not going to be able to find that rock that's on the ground and ingest it.
And break their teeth, you know.
Exactly. There's so many amazing benefits of muzzles that people immediately go to, well, that dog must be aggressive or that dog must be unfriendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the last option that we have here.
So the last one is kind of a soft muzzle, fabric muzzle, which a lot of people... like some vets will use them, some groomers will use them. I've seen them starting to be phased out a bit in those industries because they have become more knowledgeable about, of course, the risk of having your dog's mouth closed. They are not bite proof. Your dog can easily rip it off.
So this muzzle in particular, for those that can't really see the picture, it looks a little bit like a piece of fabric, basically, that's closing the mouth shut completely. Some might think that it could potentially benefit your dog if they're, for instance, barking too much.
I have gotten that so many times. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, oh, does your dog bark too much? I'm like, no.
Yeah, is that why you keep the mouth shut? But as you say, it's not particularly safe.
No, it's super dangerous because dogs, one of the ways they do regulate their body temperature is through panting. So if you take away their ability to... It would be like
mouth.
It would essentially be like putting duct tape on our mouth, right?
So it's not particularly ethical.
No,
right?
it's not. And it's dangerous because of that their mouth is closed. If they were to vomit, they could aspirate, which essentially, again, is not healthy. They could choke. And it can cause a lot of stress on the dog as well. Imagine like us on a super hot day, you know, you're going for a hike or something like that.
And you have like tape all around you or something, and you can't physically sweat it out.
Exactly.
Right? You would probably pass out.
And that's the thing. It's quite dangerous. And you'll see like owners are just trying to do what's best for their dogs. Yeah. And I absolutely love that. I love that they're advocating for their dogs, advocating for their needs. But sometimes there's just that little bit of
misinformation.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is super important. Again, why we're here to talk about. It's not an easy topic to discuss because we generally do get, there's a lot of negative misconceptions surrounding it. So
there's like an ethical way and unethical way, just like anything in life.
Exactly.
There's a good and the bad. Yep. And, you know, if you don't have that education, that knowledge, you might make choices that are not particularly good for your dog, even though you might think they are good.
They have their best interests at heart. And I always say, like, with anything to do with training, muzzle training, anything, you can only do better once you know better. Yeah. Right? So some people will go to the pet store and say, hey, I need a muzzle. There's only 2 options. Yeah. And if, like, I have found that, like, finance is a huge barrier between owners getting the proper muzzles that they need because they simply can't afford, like, these are not cheap.
Yeah, so like share, like how much is a custom-made biophane muzzle, for instance?
So for Wesley, this is his 3rd muzzle. So we've done, it can take a bit sometimes if you're not, you know, I just kind of went willy-nilly and used the measuring tape and was like, oh, like, let's just send it off and see what happens. Yeah. His first muzzle was ridiculously large on him. Right. And it was probably... I'd say including shipping, I believe it's $175 Canadian. Okay. So shipped from BC. And that's kind of the average going rate of any muzzle that you're going to see. there are some that are like based out of the UK and stuff like that, which again, you have to pay customs, you have to pay shipping.
Yeah.
So you're looking at anywhere between $100 and $200 Canadian.
Yeah.
So
that can definitely be like, oh my gosh, I have to pay so much money
exactly
to muzzle my dog. And then potentially you're going to also have to pay for training classes to, make sure that your dog is comfortable with wearing this thing.
Exactly.
And I can definitely see that as being a barrier. So then people could potentially choose to go with the cheaper route, which is not necessarily the best route for their dog.
Or they rehome their dog, or they have to surrender their dog because they can't pay for the training classes. They can't pay for proper muzzles.
Yeah.
It is a very, I'm looking into finding different ways that I could potentially have like subsidized muzzles for owners in those situations. But again, it's a long process, so stay tuned. But
exactly.
Yeah.
We might revisit this topic further down the line, if there's any progression with people being a little bit more acceptant of the muzzles and things. Like it'll be quite nice to compare of what the misconceptions were and how the society is kind of progressing into this more open and safer way of raising the dog, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, we know all about different types of muzzles now. So are you able to potentially share with us how you can make your dog like the muzzle?
For sure. So that is one of my biggest pet peeves is I see dogs at the dog park. They have a muzzle, which is great. They're advocating for their needs, but the dog is rolling around on the ground trying to paw it off because they aren't comfortable in it. It's not natural, right? It's like, it would potentially be like putting braces on for the first time.
Yeah.
Or like you're putting on like a new glove or mitten, right?
I mean, what we did recently, because, our dog, she's a dog toller, and dog tollers have very sensitive eyes.
Yeah.
So because it's snowing outside and the sun is shining, obviously the sun is reflecting off the snow. So we decided, we're going to get her like a pair of goggles, right? But that's also something that's not natural for them.
Exactly.
It's not unethical because it's not actually harming your dog. It's actually preventing their eyes from being blinded. But it's also something that we've been training very hard every day, putting the clear goggles on first, just so she knows how to use it. And then, introducing the lenses and things like that. But she still kind of goes, pats her face sometimes and be like, to get this off of me, because it's not natural.
Exactly.
So I can only assume it's kind of similar with a muzzle.
Exactly the same. It's super similar. And when you are first starting with anything, whether it be like the goggles like you're talking about or a muzzle, you want to get the dog used to even just the look of the object. Yeah. So for me, when I am doing muzzle training with clients, or even when I started with Wesley, all I did was I would take it out. Even if he would look at it, I would say yes, and I'd give him a reward. Then,
so it's a very slow process.
Very slow. Yeah. Some dogs pick it up quite quickly. Wesley took about 2 weeks for him to be like comfortable with like the muzzle being on his nose and it clipped up. It probably took us about 2 months for him to be able to be off leash around other dogs with, again, this has nothing to do with the training piece. This is just the muzzle training aspect of it.
But that's great to know, because a lot of people actually expect the dog to just get it.
No.
Right? Like, I'm just going to put this thing on the face and my dog will be fine with it. But
and they'll be totally fine.
The reality is not that simple. It takes time. Yeah. Like, people always ask, when do I stop training my dog?
Never.
And it's like, never.
You never stop training.
You literally just train them the whole life, because there will always be new things that you have to get your dog used to.
Exactly.
So that's a really good thing that you said, that it's going to take 2 months. That's realistic expectations, and it's not going to take 2 days.
No. And that is the thing that I've seen on a lot of different like pages and stuff. Like I'm a huge muzzle advocate, so I'm on a bunch of different muzzle advocacy pages, and that's what people will come and comment and say, hey, like, I've been muzzle training my dog. It's been 2 days. Why haven't they gotten it yet?
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's super important to realize that, like, you are literally just going to start by showing them the object. Yeah. If they make any motion towards it, or they look at it. You want to make a positive association. They get a treat or they get their favorite thing. You know, you toss the ball, whatever that high value reward looks like for your dog. The next kind of step is literally like presenting it to them. And if they put their nose on it, they kind of sniff it. Oh my gosh, amazing, great work. Yeah. Here's a treat. Or again, whatever value.
Yeah, or a ball or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. The next kind of step is to just kind of hold it like that. I liked the Baskerville muzzles for the purpose of they have kind of ridges on the inside. So what I would do is I would smear peanut butter in the inside of it.
Okay.
And then, of course, Wesley's like, I love peanut butter. And she's whiz. Like, this is amazing. I'm going to stick my nose in here and I'm going to lick it.
That's a good training tip.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like,
awesome.
they get super used to having their nose in it. If you are, like, waiting on a custom muzzle or you're, like, haven't been able to go to the store, even if you have, like, a yogurt container or you have like a peanut butter container that's empty. Yeah. You can put, again, yogurt, peanut butter, Cheese Whiz, anything that your dog really enjoys, put it on the bottom and have it sitting on the ground. And they're naturally going to put their face into the muzzle.
Kind of like a muzzle, right?
Exactly.
But they're putting it in the jar.
Yeah.
That's
so then
awesome.
They get used to the feeling of something being around their face. Of course, you would never do that unsupervised. Yeah. You're not just going to leave a yogurt container and
your dog has the face stuck
exactly,
in it.
Which is a huge like suffocation risk, of course. But when you're training it, you can put, you know, you can even put like beef liver treats on the bottom. They have to put their face in, and then it's their choice to pull it out. So same with like these, like any type of muzzle, you're going to start with the straps not done up. So you're going to have them kind of pulled off to the side, because even the like change of environment of moving the strap around their head.
It's like these little things that dog will just react to. And they're
exactly.
like, oh, what are you doing?
Like, this is completely new. Like,
exactly.
And that's what takes a long time, especially with muzzle training, is that your dog, as soon as you change that environment, even if it's like putting one strap up, completely different ball game.
Like, hold on, I didn't sign up for this.
Exactly.
Like, why are you putting the strap
whoa.
on my face?
And that's the thing. And people will immediately say, "Oh, my dog is good with putting their nose in. Okay, time to do it up now, and like they'll be fine." No.
Yeah.
You want to start super slow. Even once they're good with putting their nose in, you can hold treats kind of in the front so that they have to put their nose in,
put
and
it
they
right
get the
inside,
treat.
to get the treat.
And then you can slowly start phasing out the treat being like readily available. You offer it to them. They say, okay, what did I do last time to get a treat? It was they put their nose in, and then once their face is in, you give them the reward. Again, then they have the option to retreat. Yeah. You build up on time. For Wesley, eventually what we did is we kind of put... like I would hold it out, he'd put his face in for 10, 15 seconds, then he'd get a reward. Yeah. And then we built it up to the point where like I could just hold it, he would willingly put his nose in.
So how much of your day would you kind of put into this training?
So for me, I always say it's like shorter training sessions are better, especially when you're introducing a new behavior, a new concept to a dog. So especially if it's more of a scary thing. Like, imagine if I just like tried to put this on your face, you'd be like, what is happening?
Yeah, exactly.
So it is like, you'd be like, whoa, what are you doing? Crazy lady.
You would have a panic attack.
Exactly.
Be like, I can't breathe, even though it's, you know, you can clearly breathe out of it, but it's just this mental thing, right?
And that's, so what I usually suggest to owners is start with 5 minutes a day. Or if 5 minutes is too much, start with 1 minute. Yeah. Like, start where your dog is at and be patient. Yeah. It's,
if your dog is a little nervous, for instance, then you just want to stop it there.
Exactly.
And kind of not continue, maybe revisit it the next day.
Exactly. And go with your dog. You want to work with them, not against them with any sort of training. So you're going to want to, like, eventually, potentially, like, just put it on the ground. If they're super nervous, toss treats like towards your dog and towards the muzzle.
It's like, kind of like anything as well. Exactly. For instance, if your dog is nervous with wheelchairs or whatnot, or prams or anything new, you just want to toss those treats around, right?
Make a positive association with it. And you're never... you want your dog to come towards the muzzle. You don't want to bring the muzzle towards the dog.
Yeah.
Because that can be super threatening for them too. Like, whoa, like you're trying to put this on my face. I don't like that. Whereas, hey, I want to put my face in.
If they make that conscious decision to do that, then that's a good thing, right?
Exactly.
And like you making progress like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Which was the biggest thing for Wesley is like, I remember the day that I was like, oh my gosh, like he was able to like have the clips up and no issues at all, no padding, like no trying to take it off. It was like a eureka moment.
Like a big, you know, win for you guys.
It was a huge win. And like it does take a long time, like we mentioned, but it doesn't have to. Like I said, some dogs, they might pick it up right away and they're like, this is super cool. I love this.
Yeah.
Other dogs might, like I run a muzzle advocacy project and I have everywhere from my dog picked it up in 2 days to it took us 2 years to do it.
Yeah.
So
it largely depends on a dog and
exactly
how brave it is or like, you know, just how he feels about it.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
And how consistent you are as the owner as well with the training, because it definitely isn't something that, like any training, you can't just do it once and they're fine. Like Wesley is like fantastic off leash, doesn't necessarily need his muzzle off leash, but we train for every situation. So he wears it at the off leash park sometimes. Like he'll start off with it on and then I'll take it off and he's totally like, he doesn't need it at the park, but we train for that situation that say I needed it at the park. He doesn't see it as anything different than, okay, like we're just going to put my muzzle on. It's fine. Same with the vet's office. Yeah. So if he, like, I think every single dog should be muzzle trained for the reason of an emergency. Like if like potentially animal services has to pick your dog up, they're super nervous, super skittish, potentially biting, trying to bite. They may put a muzzle on your dog for safety of them as well as your pet. Yeah. If that's the first time that they've ever seen a muzzle, it's going to be super stressful. Yeah. Same at the vet. Your dog isn't feeling well. As we know, like just like us, if you have a headache, a sore stomach, you're not your best self.
Yeah. So kind of grumpy.
Yeah. You're kind of more reactive.
They might just act out of character and it's just like, you know, oh, I didn't see this coming. Yeah. And then you're in trouble then.
Exactly.
Because your dog just bit another person. Yeah. And that can literally, you know, your dog could die. Like the key could be put down just because you made that decision not to muzzle train your dog.
Exactly. And some will put, like some vets will bring the dog back. They're not, for good reason, they're not cooperating. They're uncomfortable. They're afraid. Some vets, like with Harley, my first dog, she is petrified of muzzles because there was a situation where she was uncomfortable. She was scared. So she was reacting against the vets and they decided to put a muzzle on her. And I personally am not happy with that situation. This isn't at our current vet. We absolutely love our current vet.
That's okay.
But that they didn't come and talk to us first. And so now
they just did it without your consent.
Yeah. So now
without
she's
even
petrified.
Knowing if your dog is comfortable or not.
Exactly.
So they kind of just ruined it for her, basically.
Yeah. And that this was before like I had really ever thought about muzzle training. And I wish that I had started so that when she was in that situation and they did put a muzzle on her, like she's even afraid now. We've done lots of work on it, but she doesn't even like harnesses being put over her head because it reminds her of
someone putting something over her. Yeah.
So it can be super, like if your pet has had a negative experience with a muzzle in the past, it can take quite a lot longer to convince them that this is a good thing. It's not a scary thing.
Yeah, because they're traumatized.
Exactly.
Like literally, it's like they need therapy now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? You need to like sit down and like retrain it and go from the beginning, and it can take quite a while. Like with Harley, I'm just starting the process with her, and it's like it's very much like I put it there, she sniffs it, great, and then like even like 5 or 10 times she does it and we're done our session for that day because that's
like too much.
It's too much for her. Enough. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you able, I know we kind of touched on that topic already a little bit, but are you able to maybe share some common misconceptions
for sure
of why are people so scared of muzzles? Yeah. Like why do muzzles make you uncomfortable?
Of course. So one of the biggest misconceptions that I see online, even just in like every day kind of walking with Wesley is, does your dog bite?
Yeah.
Excuse me. So with him, he is super friendly. I have a picture of him. He's absolutely adorable. I ended up actually getting him a sign on his harness that says friendly.
That's awesome.
Because
people probably don't read that though. They just kind of see the muzzle because it's so bright and colorful, and they're like, oh my God.
And they literally, I've had people leash their dogs and walk away. And he's like so sad because he just wants to play with those dogs.
Yeah.
And like one of the biggest misconceptions is that a muzzled dog is a bad dog, which they're not. There's no such thing as a bad dog.
Yeah.
And with
only bad owners.
Yeah.
We had this conversation before.
Only owners who need maybe more guidance with training and stuff like that, right? So
which is why we're here.
Of course, exactly. Why we're
to
here.
Make you a more like better human and responsible owner for your dog. So you have this knowledge and education, right?
Yeah, and it's
and
huge.
Next time you see a dog at the dog park with a muzzle, you won't be so scared. You'll be like, actually, this is safer than if that dog was without a muzzle.
Exactly. And some dogs do, like, for me, I would hope that owners who have dogs who are super uncomfortable around other dogs and would bite them wouldn't be at a dog park off leash.
Exactly.
As we know.
You would know better, right? Your dog is aggressive. They shouldn't be there.
Some people don't have that common sense, unfortunately. But like for me in that case, he's off leash. He is clearly playing with other dogs well. Like I'm right there, like monitoring all, like
if something was to happen, you are right there, and you're a trainer as well. So.
Yes, and I'm obsessed with dog behavior, so I constantly am analyzing other people's dogs' body language as well, and saying, okay, like they're uncomfortable with the way my dog's playing. Like, why don't we take a break?
Does it make you feel quite frustrated as a responsible dog owner?
Yes.
That other people obviously judge you for your dog being muzzled.
It is quite frustrating. And even this morning I had someone comment on a post saying, like, why don't you just train your dog? Like,
well, you are.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's another misconception, that dogs who are muzzled have zero training, don't have obedience training. Like Wesley at the dog park, I like, maybe I'm tooting my own horn, but he's one of the most well-behaved dogs because I have put in the time and the effort and the training with him, and we use the muzzle as a safety tool that I would hate for one, like Wesley's the one who gets to decide what he views as high value. Mm-hmm. So if he sees that stick and he's like, nope, like this is mine.
Yeah.
And another dog tries to take it and he bites that dog, that's my fault as an owner for not protecting the other dog, as well as my own. So again, Wesley's great. He, like when he's off leash, he has no issues at all. But if that were the case and he was to bite another dog, that's on Wesley. That's not on Wesley. That's on me for not advocating for him.
We've actually said that quite a lot on a podcast, being like, it's never really your dog's fault because your dog doesn't know any better. It's always you as the owner. And people find it uncomfortable because that means that you have to realize that you're the one that's responsible, right? You have to take on that blame.
Exactly.
And maybe that's what makes people uncomfortable.
Having to actually advocate for your dog's needs and realize that if you don't, there are potential consequences. Yeah. Which is a huge thing as well, that I've had people say, well, why don't you just take the muzzle off? Well, I would absolutely hate, like we've done training. He's quite good at redirecting. I'm able to get his attention, but again, if he's not feeling well that day and he decides to react and heaven forbid bites another dog or a person, his is more dog related than people related, but still that's my fault. That if I would feel absolutely horrible if I were to take that muzzle off and he were to bite another dog. I couldn't forgive myself because again, it's going to look like Wesley is at fault when really it's myself as the owner who didn't protect him from...
And then people will turn around and be like, why don't you train your dog? And it's like, I tried. Yeah. But then I get judgment from other people. Yeah. And that's also not cool.
Yeah. And I've had owners come to me and say, like, I don't want to muzzle train my dog because I'm worried about what other people will think about me and them. That I am, like the person who commented today said, you're a lazy owner because you're muzzle training your dog. no, actually I'm a responsible owner and I'm looking out for my dog's needs. So
what kind of advice would you give to people that are worried about that judgment?
For me, I always say that you can have a conversation with people and say, like, explain your situation if you're comfortable doing so. For me, I always go the education route versus the...
it's like talking to a wall sometimes though, right?
It is. And it was like the person today where I was like, this is the last time I'm commenting on this post, like in relation to you. Mm-hmm. This is my explanation. Like, have a great day. That's usually what I go to. Is like,
okay, you seem like you know better. So like,
it is talking. Yeah, it is like talking to a wall, right?
Yeah.
And you'll always have people who are going to try and say you're not a good dog owner, make you feel guilty or shameful about your dog wearing a muzzle.
Yeah. So how do you like overcome that though?
For me,
to not feel that shame and to feel like you're a bad owner or something.
Yeah.
Just because people are looking at you funny when you walk, on the street.
Every single day that we go out, sometimes I will broach the subject with people. So like I see them kind of looking at Wesley weird or, and I'll say, oh, like he's super friendly. Like in the case that he wasn't friendly, I say, oh, he just needs space.
Yeah.
Advocating, I always would look at Wesley and look at how happy and fulfilled his life is because I advocate for his needs, and I will never not advocate for those needs. Like, no, regardless of what other people think, it's not about them. It's about Wesley and about what he needs. And I've had to make changes in my own personal business to make sure that his needs are met and that he is comfortable and he feels safe. Yeah. And that is my main priority.
Of course. It always should be. It's like your child, right?
Exactly.
Like, why would you put your child in a dangerous situation or in a situation where they can't react in a safe way towards whatever is making them feel uncomfortable?
Exactly. And that is my go-to, honestly, is I will look at him and say, you know what? Like,
I'm doing a good job.
I am.
I'm a good mom.
He's happy. He's healthy. Yeah. And he is thriving. And that is, no matter what I have to do, I said I would give up my entire business for him because he is that important. Yeah.
He's part of the family, right?
Exactly. And I think that is the biggest takeaway, is that you should always advocate for your dog's needs regardless of what other people think.
That's awesome. That's a good key takeaway.
Yeah.
So would you say there are any disadvantages of training your dog to wear a muzzle? Because there are some things, like people say muzzles are uncomfortable, but we already touched on that. Well,
there's so many different ones.
Custom made to your dog, and that way it won't be uncomfortable. Yeah. Then you have people saying like, oh, it's not ethical to put something on your dog's face. Yeah. But like, are there really any disadvantages to muzzles?
I personally, like I touched on before, I think every dog should be muzzle trained, and that I don't think there are any disadvantages. Like, I think it's a great skill for your dog to have. For them, again, in emergency situation, a veterinary situation, somebody like finds them on the street or something like that, and animal services has to pick them up, they potentially might muzzle. So I always say like prepare for every situation. Yeah. So I don't think there are any disadvantages.
There you go, people. There's no disadvantages to muzzling your dog.
It doesn't cause them any harm as long as they're properly fit. Yeah. There is no...
That's what people are worried about. Yeah. Like even with crate training, it's such a taboo thing. Yeah. But it's like... your dog has to be crate trained sometimes, and it should be a safe space. It's not inhumane to crate train your dog. It's kind of the same thing with a muzzle.
And as long as you do it properly, you make sure they know that it's a safe space, a safe object. Yeah. Like I mentioned with Wesley, like this means we're going on an adventure. Yeah. Like he gets so excited. It's the same reaction he has.
It's a doodle, right? So they probably jump up and down.
He does. He does his little kangaroo jumps. He's like, Mommy, I'm so excited to go. Anywhere with me, he's happy. So he's so funny. Like, you want to go for a car ride to the store? He's like, yeah, let's go. Like, but yeah, I personally don't think that there are any, as long as you are conditioning it properly, it's fit properly, it's not going to hurt them. It's not going to cause any stress if you do it properly again.
Yeah.
I think it's a great resource and a great tool to have in your toolbox for your dog.
Well, then I just don't understand. Why do people feel this way? We need to change the feelings, hey?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of misconceptions for sure surrounding it. And there are going to be those dogs who are muzzled because they are uncomfortable around people, dogs. And it's important to respect the space of dogs who are wearing muzzles unless you are welcomed into that space. So,
yeah, but it works like that even if your dog isn't muzzled.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That's part of being a responsible owner, is to just feeling how your dog is feeling that day and kind of figuring out whether your dog wants to be welcomed by another dog.
Exactly.
Like, that's the most annoying situation.
Yeah,
when you
like,
have
I didn't
your
want
dog.
to say hi.
Yeah, and it's like, my dog doesn't have to say hi to everybody.
No.
Like, maybe today's just not that day.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And I think that nobody
Why
should.
does a muzzle make things different?
Yeah, and it shouldn't. Like, I personally think that you shouldn't ever just walk up to another person's dog and pet them. Like, you should always ask for consent and permission. But unfortunately, that's not the way society is. They don't view dogs as kind of their own beings. They view them as property. So that's a whole other topic.
Yeah,
but
that's a good topic to talk about. Maybe we can put that in someday.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So are you able to share any personal experiences or maybe success stories of how muzzle has changed someone's life?
Yeah.
Like dog's life, I mean.
Yeah, of course. So
but owners too, I guess, because it kind of works both ways, right?
Yeah. So I actually created a muzzle advocacy project.
Okay.
So
tell us more about it.
Yeah.
Right?
So what we do is we share, because of such the negative stigma that surrounds dogs and their guardians, I kind of had enough one day and I was like, you know what? I want to create a platform and a space for owners to share their, like you said, their success stories, their, like why they started to muzzle train their dog, why
it had like positive impact
exactly
on their behavior.
Yeah. And like, I always include like, what's your favorite thing about your dog? Because I find people sometimes, will see a muzzled dog and immediately think they are a bad dog.
Yeah.
But no, like they're
I'm not gonna lie though, like that was me too.
Of course.
Because that's just kind of like, I don't know what it is about humans that just, they see this thing on dog's face and they instantly assume things. And it's like, and I caught myself and I'm like, no, actually that's a good thing. Yeah. And like, I'm there putting my hand up, like I was that person too.
And I used to be as well.
Yeah.
Before I had Wesley, I didn't truly understand what, like I knew what muzzles were for, but again, it was like Wesley wears his muzzle in specific situations. It's not 24/7. And I guess that's another thing I should touch on is that muzzles should never be worn unsupervised. So like your dog should never be wearing a muzzle and then you leave the house because like, they could like end up with strangling themselves or something like that in like a like extreme situation, obviously. Yeah. But to go back to your question, every week we share a story from, I've had people from across the world. Like I had, the last one we did was local, but the last week's was from someone from Qatar. Wow. So it's bringing people together from across the world. And that's like
completely different cultures and completely different views about certain things, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah. And that was kind of what I wanted to do, is share that like, it doesn't matter who you are, who your dog is, that they like muzzle training is like universal. Like you can use it in so many different situations, and to share those stories and successes of owners. Like when I approach owners and say, hey, would you be interested in doing this? They're just floored. They're like, this is absolutely amazing. We would love to share our story. And it is something that we're doing around the world, which has been incredible. I've had people from the UK, the States, I've had Qatar, Australia. Like it's absolutely amazing to see.
So do you have like any specific story that you could maybe talk to us about?
I'm trying to think. I've shared quite a few of them.
Or maybe one of the clients that you worked with and you have introduced a muzzle training and kind of like how that has impacted their life in a positive way.
I think the most personal one that I can touch on is, of course, Wesley, of the amount of stress that it takes off of myself personally, because I am constantly, because he is a resource guarder, I am constantly watching his body language and behavior to see, is he going to react? I never want to put him in a situation where he is going to, of course. That's not the purpose of that. But he's the one who decides.
Yeah,
so one day he might be having a harder day.
Like, you can't read his mind. He's a dog.
Exactly. So around Christmas time, when we had friends and family over, again, his major thing that he guards is food. So I had his muzzle on. He was able to go down on a mat and like by the kitchen table with my other dog around. We were able to celebrate Christmas as a family with him, me not having to constantly be looking at his behavior and his body language and saying, like, it took the stress off of me as an owner to say that if I was to be enjoying my Christmas dinner and I missed something, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
That he's wearing
it just
his
makes
muzzle.
Everyone happier.
It's so much less stress. And again, we've trained for these situations. I wasn't just like, well, let's try it. Like Christmas time, like let's put him in a situation. We've trained for this.
But that's big. Like,
and
you
it was
are
huge.
Actually able to enjoy Christmas as a family without worrying.
Yeah.
And like, your dogs are part of your family.
Yep.
So like, for them to be there during Christmas time,
Exactly.
that's a big success story.
Yeah. It was huge because I didn't have to sit separately with him and manage the situation of like the environment. I was able to say, you know what, we've trained for this, but in the event that something was to happen, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So I felt that was huge, a huge success story for us. And I know many others have felt the same way. Like through, like we post them on our Instagram and Facebook each week. But yeah, it's been incredible to see a whole community coming together to essentially say, like, there are no bad dogs.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can be part of this community
Of course,
as well.
we absolutely love it. And we're so thankful that you were interested in this topic, because not many people want to talk about it or have the interest. Like, they don't want the controversy, right? Like, it's,
Controversy is good.
It is.
In small doses.
It creates good, positive change.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only way we can create change, is by talking about
Exactly.
about all these controversial subjects. Yeah. So I feel like we kind of covered everything, unless you have anything else to share about the topic.
I don't think so. I think that, the biggest takeaway is, like, make sure that you meet your dog's needs and advocate for them. And if that includes a muzzle, you should never feel shamed for choosing that route. And
Awesome. Well, how about you share where our listeners can find you and where they can kind of sign up for your advocacy project?
Yeah. So we do, we're on Instagram as well as Facebook. So Suns Out, Paws Out, YYC, on both Instagram and Facebook. And then we have our website, which you can find through the Instagram in our link tree. And we do blog posts on there as well about, like, proper muzzle training. We share the stories as well on our blog. So yeah, it's a great resource, great, like, supportive community for you to come and know that it's a safe space.
All right. Awesome. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone for listening, and we hope that we were able to answer the majority of your questions and concerns that you may have had about muzzles. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on this video to help us educate people out there and hopefully break the stigma of muzzled dogs, because muzzled dogs are good dogs. See you next time.